Welcome back to the 9th lesson in this series on using Tkinter to create a working interface. In this lesson, we'll learn how to read previously saved data back into the interface. In this lesson, we'll briefly recap what we learned last lesson about saving data to a file. We'll load the data that we've saved before, open a new window and display data in that window. So you'll learn a number of new techniques that will be useful in your own project. To briefly recap what we did last lesson, you saved transaction data, stored it first of all as a text string, and then appended that string to a file. This is the command you used last lesson to write data to a file. It only takes these 2 lines. Let's have a quick look at the contents of this command. We've opened the file name with the tag A in quote marks. That means append, which means that our new data is added to the save file, which gets bigger and bigger. If you want to overwrite instead of append, you use a W instead. All this code can be used exactly as it stands, except for the word here that I've called save string. That's the name of the text variable that I want to save into the file. So you would change that word only, and you can use the rest of the code exactly as it stands. It's also worth pointing out that this word here, file name, is in capitals because it's a constant. And if you remember, at the top of your code, you link this constant to whatever file name you want to use in your project. That means that if at some later date you want to change the name of the file, you only have to change it in one spot in your code. Okay, so that's how we write to a file. Now let's see how we can bring the data back that we've saved before and show it on the screen. So in this lesson, you're going to add a new button to the interface. That's just using techniques that we've learned before, and you'll link that button to a procedure. The procedure will do some new things. It will open a second window on the screen. It will read the data from the saved file, and it will display that data in the second window. So you'll learn some new methods there. So first of all, we're going to add a new button to the interface. There it is. I've called it load data and I've positioned it at the bottom. See if you can, it's only a couple of lines to create that. So see if you can make a button that looks like that. If you want to try this, pause the video now and have a go, because I'm going to show you the code on the next slide. So this is the code to create a button. I said 2 lines, it's actually 3, isn't it? So I've created the button with the text load data. I've positioned it in row 3, column 0, and I've padded it slightly so it's not so squished up. Now I'm going to create a procedure, and this is new commands that you haven't learned before. So I go to the top where my procedures are, and I've created a new procedure. I've called it load data. You obviously can call it anything you like. And then I've created a second window, which I very imaginatively called window 2. And it's top level. That means it will open as a fresh new window, but it's linked to my first window, which I just called window. So window 2 is a window built on top of the current window. So you can simply copy that code. And now I link the procedure to the button that I made earlier. And you do know how to do that, but let me just remind you, we just put this line, this extra code at the end of the first line, command equals, and then the name of our procedure. And that procedure will now be triggered whenever the user clicks on that button. And so if we run the code, it's worked fine. Obviously, we haven't finished yet, but it is doing what we want it to do. If you click on the load data button, a second window will open on the screen. So that's what we want to happen. Now let's see how to load the data into that window. This was the code to write to a file that we looked at earlier. You can copy this code and then make slight amendments to it or retype, because the new code to read the data from a file looks very, very similar. In fact, there are only really two changes. One is that instead of opening with the A tag, we're opening with the R tag, and you won't be surprised to hear that that means open it to read from. And the second line is different. Instead of my file write, it's my file read. And we put the variable name before the read function. So I've just called my variable data. You can obviously call your variable anything you like. So the name of your variable equals sign and then myfile.read, open and close brackets. And myfile.read is a function, and it returns the data read from the file. And I'm capturing the returned data in a text variable, which I've just called data. So I've just left that up there because if you're going to copy this code into your own program, that's the bit that you have to copy. Those two lines will read text from a saved file and store it in a variable of the name of your choosing. So to complete the procedure, you need to add a couple of extra lines, and this is what they should do. Create a label in window 2, and you can position it in that window. I suggest position 0, 0, and display the text variable that you've just created in this window. So see if you can make that happen. Pause the video. I'm going to show you the code for this and the whole completed procedure on the next slide. So here's the completed procedure. It's called load data, and here are the 3 sections of the procedure to go back over it. I've opened a second window linked to the current window. I've opened my file and read the data to a text variable, which I've just called data. And then in the final 2 lines, I've created a label called show data. It's in window 2, and the text of the label is the variable data. Of course, use your variable name. And then I've positioned it in column 0, row 0 of the second window. So that's a relatively straightforward way to get data and display it. You could use part of that procedure, whatever's useful for you. But there it all is anyway. And when you run the code, this is what you'll see on the screen. Click on load data. It will load the data from the stored file and display the data variable in a second window. The data is a little bit of a mess because, to cut corners, I haven't done a lot of the formatting that I've recommended to you, but it's a proof of concept. You can make it look nicer than this, but it's the general idea. So over to you. Try out the code shown here if you're doing the currency converter. If you're practicing alongside me doing the currency converter, then you can just copy the code shown in this presentation. But of course, the ultimate aim is for you to use these ideas in your own project. So what you should be aiming to do is to take these ideas, the ideas of opening a new window, loading data from a save file and displaying data in a new window, which you can do at any part of your own project, whatever seems appropriate. If you've got any questions, of course, get in touch with me. If you're one of my students, of course, get in touch with me and I'm happy to help. Okay, so as it says on the screen, over to you. Bye for now.